there, and welcome to Psychiatry XR, where we are on a mission to inspire worldwide conversations and innovation around the use of extended reality in psychiatric care. I'm your host, Kim Bullock, and I'm also a clinical professor and XR researcher in Stanford School of Medicine. I'm triple board certified in psychiatry, behavioral neurology, neuropsychiatry, and lifestyle medicine. And I, along with my co-creators, Jessica Hagen and Faaizah Arshad, have created Psychiatry XR, which is a monthly podcast for all stakeholders, including clinicians, researchers, mental health providers, XR developers, investors, patients, and anyone fascinated by the ways in which evidence-based medicine and technologies can be used in mental and behavioral health. So in each episode, we invite a new guest to shine light and insight into the potential benefits, challenges, and questions around immersive technology in mental health care. You can join us monthly on Apple Podcasts, Twitter, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. And please note that this podcast is distinct from my own clinical teaching and research roles at Stanford. The information provided is not medical advice and should not be considered or taken as a replacement for medical advice. We are here to learn together, to be humble, and to explore an emerging field. We're seeking conversations to support those that are creating solutions for some of the hardest problems in our communities. So today, since this is our first podcast, we thought it's important to give you some context about who we are and how we became involved in the XR space and what our intentions and visions are for this podcast. So I'm going to give you a little background about myself and my own story as a primer. So I've always been really interested in the nervous system and understanding why and how people behave the way they do. I was an undergraduate in psychology and physiology at UC San Diego in the 80s, and the field of neuroscience was really having some tremendous breakthroughs at the time in the La Jolla area. And one of my favorite classes was perceptual psychology, taught by professor and neurologist Dr. V.S. Ramachandran. And he was one of the first to report on the use of mirror therapy, actually, which is basically an augmented reality illusion that was used to amputate phantom limbs of those suffering with distressing and painful sensations after amputations of a limb. And his class actually inspired me to go to medical school, and I wanted to pursue neurology like him. But by the end of medical school, I had switched my interest to psychiatry because my involvement with the homeless mentally ill in the Washington, D.C. area. At the time, there was a huge epidemic of that going on there, and I was highly involved in that community. And psychiatric illness also seemed much more complex and mysterious and had room to explore and make breakthroughs. So after doing my internship in internal medicine, I did psychiatry residency at Stanford and specialized in neuropsychiatry and cognitive behavior therapy. And while exploring physiotherapy for some of my psychosomatic illness patients, I happened to visit Jeremy Bailenson virtual human interaction lab on campus, where he and his graduate students were experimenting with mirror therapy for chronic pain. And I returned back to my roots and fascination with perceptual psychology and began collaborating with the virtual human interaction lab in the communications department with different psychiatric populations. And eventually, I then opened the virtual reality and immersive technology clinic, specializing in XR enhancements of cognitive behavior therapy in the psychiatry department. And I've been doing that for the last 7 years. So it kind of felt like serendipity, like I was coming full circle from 20 years previously. And since then, I've been exploring, researching, and innovating XR in psychiatric practice. But to be honest, I feel like a newbie. And with so much in this area that still needs to be discovered and learned, in part of this journey, I realized that no one can accomplish anything alone, and we can't work in silos. You need support, community, networks, and many times we all feel cut off from these, and for all sorts of reasons. Everyone has their own, but we all support each other through a series of conversations. So I decided to create a place for conversations through the Stanford Psychiatry Immersive Technology Consortium to really facilitate cross-disciplinary relationships, innovation in this space. And this podcast, in a sense, is an outgrowth of those conversational and relationships and an attempt to share this network with a broader audience. So my vision and intent for the podcast is really to foster a non-hierarchical, collaborative education without creating experts or gurus, but focused on facts and providing support for innovation in all its forms and possibilities. And selfishly, this podcast serves as my own ideal education. We're creating the dream curriculum taught by the most talented and experienced teachers on a variety of topics in many fields, and an egalitarian environment that promotes diversity, which I believe is the key to excellence and required if we're going to make any significant innovation and change in this space. But that's enough about me. We're going to move on to our other co-host and founders, starting with Jessica Hagen. Jessica, could you tell us who you are and how you ended up in the XR space and what your intentions are for the podcast?
Thank you, Kim. I'm Jessica Hagen. I'm a healthcare reporter and editor. I've covered the pharmaceutical and biotechnology industries, as well as general happenings within healthcare globally, including the expansion of digital health and the evolution of the medical XR industry. I was first introduced to VR about 5 or 6 years ago, and I thought it was a very compelling technology, but I wasn't immediately fascinated by it. It wasn't until I started to really explore how it was being used in healthcare and I began to learn how providers were treating patients that it became very intriguing to me. I started to learn about the various platforms, the research being done by universities and pharmaceutical companies, and I would research the industry and the people within the industry. I began attending conferences to really get to know these people and better comprehend how healthcare providers and other healthcare stakeholders used immersive technology. I wanted to introduce the potential of XR to providers who may not have been privy to the methods through my reporting. The first immersive tech conference I attended was actually Oculus 5, and though the event didn't focus much on healthcare, from what I did see in the realm, it really hooked me. And the next conference I went to was the International Virtual Reality Healthcare Association conference in Tucson, Arizona, and there were no reporters in attendance. I thought, how is this field that has so many original innovators putting this unique spin on healthcare have no media coverage? And what's really interesting is I attended and covered IVRA's event in Nashville earlier this year in 2022. And though there still are not many reporters, the presence of these giant tech companies and healthcare organizations was palpable. Microsoft, Meta-affiliated companies, the National Institute of Health, Johnson & Johnson, and HDMS of CVS Health, they all attended. And you could see their enthusiasm for the potential that VR has to offer in healthcare. And it's quite fascinating and great to watch and report on. So I've seen medical XR change dramatically over the years with advancing technology and new and innovative ways of using that tech that really impacts healthcare. And it's a very exciting time to cover the industry. I'm thrilled to be part of this podcast because I think it's vital to have these conversations about how medical XR writ large has and will change the healthcare landscape, and to showcase the companies, organizations, and individuals really pioneering these pretty fascinating innovations. As the technology progresses, which it's doing at such a fast pace as technology does, new platforms are emerging, and through our conversations, it's my hope that we as hosts and our listeners can simultaneously discover the different ways the healthcare ecosystem is using it and share those best practices for the benefit of both healthcare providers and patients. So I'm really excited to learn more as we move through this journey and explore how medical XR is being used to treat patients, how it's affecting the healthcare ecosystem directly and indirectly, and how patients are reacting to this tech. I think even learning about and discussing various concerns often expressed about immersive technology by those inside and outside of the industry, and then solutions people have found to specific problems will be incredibly valuable as medical XR moves forward and progresses. It's an exciting time for the industry, and I'm really thrilled to be able to dive further into the nuances and really converse with the people and companies affecting these changes within the healthcare ecosystem. So on that note, I will hand it over to Faaizah. Faaizah, if you would like to take it away, that would be awesome.
Thanks, Kim and Jessica. I'm Faaizah Arshad, and I'm an undergraduate student at UCLA. And early on, I cemented an interest in science and decided to pursue a psychology major because it aligned with my deep enthusiasm for understanding the mind and behavior. I'm really interested by the way in which clinicians diagnose and treat cognitive and behavioral diseases and disorders. And I'm also interested in how we can generate interdisciplinary, reliable evidence to create clinically useful resources that improve psychiatric patient care. So, to learn more about quality of evidence and care, I've spent the last 2 years conducting observational research using real-world data, like electronic health records and administrative claims, to characterize population-level diseases and understand methodologies that are being used by healthcare systems. I really believe that one underlying goal in medicine is using quality research to establish and apply the best clinical practices that individualize patient care. And psychiatry is a field that will benefit so much from fresh and emerging technologies like extended reality that are reinforced by research. I also think that extended reality and immersive technologies excite me because they're versatile and they can be individualized. In fact, I actually met Kim and Jessica through the Stanford Psychiatry Immersive Technology Consortium, SPITSI, and it's been such a phenomenal way to educate myself in this space and get involved in a network and community of people who are specialized at a variety of topics. I'm also a director and writer for a Los Angeles organization that partners with nonprofits to bring free and long-term healthcare services to underserved communities. I think it's so crucial to push for health equity and accessibility in medicine, and extended reality really holds the potential to do that. For example, I think that in the future, it's possible that extended reality can be used more frequently for remote psychiatric care, which can perhaps bring innovative treatments to rural areas and directly to the patient's location. I think it's also possible that more options for extended reality treatments are made available at cost-effective prices that all patients can access. So the way in which immersive technologies can enhance equity is really promising to me. And while I'm still early on in my academic career and I do aspire to pursue medicine, I think this podcast will be an invaluable way to stay up to date on the latest digital revolutions in psychiatric and behavioral health, which I'm sure will have evolved in many ways by the time I am a practicing physician years from now. There's just so much to learn and also so many ways to contribute to the field. And I'm hoping that everyone who listens to our podcast feels the same excitement for the future of immersive medicine.
So that's us, and this is the Psychiatry XR podcast. Thanks for getting to know your co-host, and we hope to provide you with even more realistic and conversational deep dives into the wide range of current and emerging XR-enhanced solutions for psychiatric care. Thanks for listening. This episode was brought to you by Psychiatry XR, the psychiatry podcast about immersive technology and mental health. For more information about Psychiatry XR, visit our website at www.psychiatryxr.com. Make sure to subscribe to the podcast and tune in again for our next episode where I will walk you through a primer on the very basics of XR in psychiatry. Kim Bullock produced this podcast with the help of Faaizah Arshad and Jessica Hagen, and we credit and are grateful to Austin Hagen for music and audio production. See you next time.
Thank you.